So I recently asked my community of product leaders on LinkedIn and Twitter what they consider to be the most effective model of accountability for their product teams. And overwhelmingly what they said is that simply showing results versus goal is how they hold their product teams accountable. And they gave me lots of interesting comments in the feedback. But in this episode, we're diving really another layer or two deeper with our product leaders to understand exactly the how-to of accountability that they have found works for their product teams, again, across multiple companies and organizations. These are the product leaders that we're going to be speaking with today. You can get more information on their background by watching their bio videos using the links below. So in today's episode, here's some of the things you're going to learn. You're going to learn how they have a culture of accountability that also encourages risk-taking so that the teams are not simply just doing incremental small optimization improvements. We're going to learn how they have rituals to provide that transparency around results versus goals. We're going to hear what happens in those unfortunate situations when goals are not met. And we're going to hear that it's not just about holding teams accountable, but it's also helping the product teams to be accountable so that they increase their probability of achieving their goals. So that's what we're going to hear from our 5 experienced product leaders today.
What is our model for accountability? We've recently implemented something that's a very interesting model for accountability. And again, I have to go back to that we're operating with a very small team. And so there is still a collegiality and camaraderie that's very easy to maintain. But we gather as a team with our, lead engineers, data engineers, company leaders, product managers, every Monday night at 5 o'clock. And we spend an hour to 2 hours looking at the data that has accumulated over what we have shipped over the past few weeks. And we look together at what's making a difference. And we start to generate new ideas or spotting, are we measuring that correctly? And it's great. The PMs can own it and they can take credit for mistakes. They can take credit for celebrations, but everybody's got skin in the game once we've got something out there, once we're looking at these dashboards, once we're looking at test results. And what we're finding now is that this Monday night at 5 o'clock meeting, when everybody should just be like, I got to get out of here, our design team is starting to show up. Our marketing team is starting to show up. More engineers are starting to show up because people are very interested in the impact of the work they do. And I think it collectively makes us better, but it also makes us very, very thoughtful about what we're responsible for as product managers, because everybody that we've asked to contribute to our products is sitting in the room looking at these numbers. It's kind of a naked moment for you.
I love it. I haven't heard about those meetings, but it does speak to the cross-functional nature and people feeling like there is meaning and impact in the work that they're doing. And it seems like that's sort of the moment where it all is clarified for everybody. So that's an awesome meeting. What do you call that meeting?
Monday night data meeting. we should have a snappier name for it. Data roundup.
Right. Do you serve drinks, or is it just about the data?
We're a pretty sober company, so no.
Yeah. So just
data and Red Bull. That's I'm really going to try to come up with like a snappy name for it.
Okay, cool. Well, it seems like it doesn't need any branding. It seems like it's doing just fine. So
it really, so far in my time at Homebase, that has been the most surprising thing that has happened to us is people's enthusiasm around really examining what does success mean.
It's great. I love it. I mean, it's great to have a whole culture around success.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. And when you do, I think what happens is you become less afraid of failure and you become less risk averse. And as a startup, you know, you want to be swinging for the fences. You want to be able to take risks, but you want to know those risks are right sized. And when you are looking at the data every single Monday night with your colleagues and taking the wins and taking the losses and sort of getting it wrong and getting it right together, I think that it does create an environment where people have a much greater appetite for doing something big.
So my preferred model of accountability really starts with the team, and in terms of what is the team trying to accomplish, because in most software and technology companies, no one individual can really do all that much, that you're going to have to collaborate and work with others. And so what's important is what objective you set for that team and how you're going to measure success. And then if you're successful, the team should really benefit in that success. And so typically companies, that they benefit in terms of they're going to get a better review at the end of the year, they're going to get higher salary, they're going to get promoted, they're going to be given larger challenges to take on or more important challenges to take on. And I think that makes sense, that in the companies that we work on, really the reward is the work, that you are able to take on bigger and better problems. And I think that's what many of us are motivated by, is that you're able to get that. And if some money comes along the way, then that's great. But it's less about that. It's more about the team accomplishment of what you're able to do. What I think is important to think about accountability is what happens when it doesn't work so well. And that's where you start to unpack the reasons why, and the outcomes may be different. So for example, what I really think is important is getting the role right. So for people on my team, Jeff, I define what their particular role is as a product leader or product manager, and did I put the right person in the role for the moment in time that we're in. And so what I find is if I don't get that set up right, then the tell for me is that I start micromanaging. And now I'm involved, and now I'm overturning decisions. I'm trying to understand why they made this decision, which doesn't make sense to me. And so what I use is I use that as a clue. I say, okay, Preston, why are you micromanaging this situation? Did you not define the role well enough? Do you have the wrong person in the role? Do you need to coach them to be better? Is that not possible? And they really need to have it, play a role somewhere else. And so I think it's really trying to unpack what's going on. And that's where you start looking at an individual level. You say, is this, is the reason it's not succeeding because we have the wrong product strategy, or we're making the wrong decisions around product, in which case then you shine a light on that product manager. Is it they've got the right approach, but the engineering team isn't meeting the challenge? And so then you need to start unpacking, like, do they have enough resources? Do they have the right leadership? What's blocking them? Are there other dependencies that they may have that you need to then go shine a light on? So the whole thing, when it's not going well, is really this investigation of trying to figure out where are we going wrong. And it may be multiple things, but it starts with getting the role right and getting the right person in that role. Because I think in order for us to be good leaders, we need to have people working for us that are owners, not renters. That they shouldn't be just doing what they've been told. They should really be thinking about, look, this is my product. We're working on this together. We have our customers. How are we going to, better serve those customers? And so that's what they're living and breathing every day. And so ultimately, they should feel accountable to those customers and those outcomes they're trying to create with their customers. And if it's not happening, then you've got to start to unpack why.
Okay, on accountability, I think the major thing of setting goals only a quarter hour is that they should be very accomplishable. And in that regard, the team should be held accountable if we didn't hit them, because we should have enough certainty going into a quarter, for what we should actually accomplish. That said, a lot of things I've used in various different teams is something like OKRs. Where you maybe set an aggressive goal and don't necessarily intend to hit it, but directionally, it's trying to get to about 60 to 70% of whatever your metric was. And a lot of times there's a lot of uncertainty when you're first starting to do something. So the key is to have that uncertainty be wide, and you want to achieve as much as you humanly can, but likewise you realize that for new things, the certainty is going to be extremely broad across the probability. Whereas if you're trying to do something like, knock down defects, you should know what your defect velocity is, and you should have some good sense for that. So it's going to vary depending on what it is. If it's something new, it's a wide range. If it's something well known, it's a narrower range. But to keep the teams accountable, you do try and do that quarterly, so that you're always committing to what you're telling the rest of the organization. That's the important part, is you don't want to give the organization information that's ahead of where you're going to be.
And so for your teams, is it just like a statement of results against goals? Is it something that gets like reported out in an email? Like what is, or is it performance? Like what is the way that accountability is sort of acknowledged, or that the result versus goal is captured?
Right. In the best circumstance, you would have some sort of incentive tied to the goal. So all the things are working together. In a lot of different environments, sometimes that's not the case yet. But the key is, if you're transparent about it with your own org, then at least keeping it internally, then you could put it against an annual merit increase, or a bonus if there is one. The key, though, is measuring it on a regular basis and then checking in with the teams. Another way that we do that on a weekly basis is we do product demos. So no matter what it is, even if it's an API, we want to have a product demo to say, what did we accomplish this week? And so demos are very short. The time frame is very short, and it's only a week's worth of work. But it shows, if you do the demo on a weekly basis, people get used to it, like, oh yeah, we have to show something for this. Therefore, we can't be doing these big balled up projects that take forever to do. We have to show incremental value on a regular basis. And so demos have definitely been one way to keep accountability up. But likewise, you're keeping track at a global scale for either a longer term incentive plan, or just for the health of the team.
I think when I think about how teams can truly be accountable to those goals that they have, there's a couple of pieces to that. I think one piece of it is about the way that the reflection of yourself in others, essentially. That part of what makes you accountable is you have to get up and talk about it with everybody else. It becomes public. It becomes transparent. It is something that others are expecting to hear from you on a regular basis. And whether that's just in quarterly planning, whether that's in sprint demos, whether that's in sprint retrospectives, whether that's in monthly reviews with the C-suite about how our metrics are performing, that there is an expectation. We are setting that goal for our product development teams. We are making it a part of what the organization expects of you. So one of the things I recently did, now that this is a new job, was define product career ladders, where I'm saying, this is the role of a product manager. These are the things you have to do at this level and this level and this level. And part of what I believe to help with achieving things like creating accountability to their goals is saying this is a part of your job. Part of your job is to be accountable, is to take ownership, is to tell people how you did, is to plan your strategy for your team and your backlog so that you achieve your goals, and to have to speak to it when you don't. Like, one of the, of course, tensions that is dealt with here is there's often an anxiety about that from product development teams who aren't necessarily that far along on that path, where they're worried about bad news. They're worried about telling someone they failed. They don't want red dots on a chart. And it's a hard change to make in an organization that doesn't understand that failure is a part of success. They might absorb it for a quarter, and then they're like, there's still too much red on here. What are we talking about? And I think balancing that for teams is part of my job as a product leader, to ensure that they are accountable, but maybe it's not necessarily accountable that the CEO sees, oh, that team is not delivering on the promises they made. But if they're accountable to me, I'm going to have those conversations with them. I'm going to speak to them and find out what are the things you need to spend more time on. And it's not anyone's fault, right? When a team is not performing to the goals that they're doing. It might be. Let me take that back a second. But it's not a fault in of itself, right? If we're committing teams to take big swings, it's not bad to get the wrong things, but let's talk about it. It is a conversation. It is a coaching moment. It is a moment of growth for that team to figure out, why is this the case? Are you just taking on a really big challenge and as a result it's hard to accomplish? Is it something mechanical like velocity or performance or code quality? Is there too much stuff? Like there's the same principles we apply to understanding customer problems we apply to ourselves as product managers and product leaders. We analyze what the problem actually is. We look at what the impact of it might be. We map out on a customer journey where the pain points are, where the time is wasted. And we take that opportunity to then look back at it and say, hey, let's fix this so you are accomplishing your goals, or let's adjust those goals for the future. Everything is about tuning and adjustment and finding the right spot for a team or a product manager or a product leader to perform. So let's do that together. Let us find out how we connect your goals back to what you're actually doing so that you can succeed, so you can be set up for success. So for me, it is about providing that framework around the team to create accountability, to create visibility into what they're doing, to hold, there's the holding them accountable, and then there's the helping them be accountable and making sure that they are able, through coaching and working with them to set goals and helping them develop as product managers, to get that sweet spot a little closer and more aligned.
We actually have a rating structure as well as bonus, and they're often tied, but not always. We are actually playing around with having either 50-50 split. So I do want to have a shared ownership with some of the goals. There are just some things that we as a team are working on. And it's usually the hard ones, the ones where, the platform team, for example, right? They can't just own that people will adopt their stuff. You need the application team to actually also share the goal of adoption of platform features, right? So there will be a few, but then 50% is what we're thinking we will do, will be, as you say, driven by the product manager themselves. In some cases where it is share product ownership and driving, it may be a party. It may simply just be a party because we know that you were an ambassador for this and drove it. But where it truly can be measured, for example, one of my product managers, the whole of this coming year, I'm not worried about any new feature he's going to deliver because we need his features adopted. That's it. So him and the product marketing person, as well as some of the client success directors who own these accounts, are completely responsible for feature adoption. So we need to go from 23% to 62%, right? And that's what they're focused on. You can build new things, but what's the point if nobody's using it? So that's what we're working on.
That's great. And I love that it's not just the product team that is responsible, because it's a team sport, right? So the fact that you've got product marketing and customer success, do your engineers also have accountability in these goals, or how does that work?
Not in this feature adoption one, for example. No, they don't. Mm-hmm. But that's a great question. I haven't thought about that. If I were to do, I would actually have it more on the other side, which is around CSAT for the product. Because I think where we struggle the most is in quality, not necessarily quality in bad code, but the architecture didn't take into account certain things, and really tying the engineer to the end result and the dissatisfaction, I think yields better product, just better thinking, right? So I actually haven't thought about how to incent our engineers. I just want to get them predictable, get their work to be more predictable right now and high quality, and faster, more high quality and predictable.
Look, setting goals is a key part of the success equation, but in and of itself is not enough. Otherwise, every year we would have no problem meeting all those New Year's resolutions that we make. In fact, there was a recent study by the American Society of Training and Development that found there's 2 key factors in increasing the probability of somebody achieving their goal. And the first is actually committing out loud that goal to someone else. And when you have that verbal commitment to another person, they found that people had a 65% increased chance of achieving their goal. So that's a great first step. The second that actually increases that percentage to 95% is when they have an accountability appointment to that person. So there's ways that we can incorporate these types of findings into our work as product leaders to increase the odds of our teams being successful. So I want to leave you with a checklist that you can refer to as you're trying to find the right model of accountability for your organization. And so here are the steps. One is set goals. Okay, that is the first fundamental step. Make sure those goals are meaningful and measurable and time-bound. You know, all the SMART goal setting. Second, you want to make sure that those goals align with the mission and purpose that is going to create success, not only for your teams and your companies, but for your customers. Third, you want to provide that transparency. So you're going to commit those goals and make those goals available in a public place, provide that transparency. You might put them on walls, on monitors. You might have events where you're sharing those goals. Maybe it's part of your OKR setting process. So transparency on both the goals, and you want to make sure that you're providing transparency on the results. And the way that we do that is through rituals like discovery demos or sprint demos or product reviews or OKR reviews. You want to make sure that if you expect accountability, you are also creating an accountability support system where the teams are supported when they encounter those inevitable roadblocks. So by anticipating the roadblocks, by having a culture and cross-functional approach to identifying the roadblocks, resolving them, and making sure the team feels supported. This is a support system that is going to be both of people and process and empathy, because teams are going to make mistakes, so we have to anticipate roadblocks. Secondly, we want to make sure that those teams have people to go to. It could be cross-functional partners, could be other product teams. It's certainly better be you as their product leader, so that they can get those roadblocks resolved, or if they're stuck on a problem, help them find a way forward. So by providing both empathy and support, we increase the likelihood that people themselves will hold themselves accountable. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we're also setting expectations in the organization that this is going to be messy, that all the numbers are not immune to the right, that is our commitment and that is our mission. So I hope you found this advice from our product leaders and myself helpful as you think about the right model of accountability for your product teams. And if you are looking for an accountability partner, you can reach out to me, make an appointment with me by reaching out on LinkedIn or Twitter. I would love to be of help and learn what could be working better for you at your company and for your product teams. Thanks.